Hello, I'm David Kerr, Professor of Cancer Medicine from University of Oxford. I'd like to talk a little about a paper that's just been published in Lancet Oncology by a very distinguished group, many of whom are represented on the WHO panel for developing the Essential Cancer Medicines list. They undertook a cross-sectional international survey across 82 different countries, covering the range of high to middle to low income nations. And this survey was open to physicians who were practicing cancer medicine and who were routinely prescribing cancer medicines, chemotherapy drugs, targeted agents and so on. They managed to get engagement by around 950 oncologists, so a great effort. I must be honest, I'm not a huge fan of surveys. I think that there's a potential for there being a huge selection bias, how representative they are, what fraction of the total population of oncologists, are they academic centres, are they work, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, it was a noble attempt to get a feel for which of the medicines which are listed by WHO are used routinely in clinical practice. The oncologists were asked to list their top 10 favourite drugs. I think this is a clever approach. And sort of no real surprise, the vast majority of these, apart from osimertinib, were on the essential medicines list. That's a good correlation. That in 75% of cases, the top 10 drug list overlapped, whether from high or low-income countries. That's interesting. The vast majority of those were conventionally cytotoxic drugs, which were all approved before the year 2000. Old friends, very old friends actually, like doxorubicin, 5-fluorouracil, Taxol, and so on, cisplatin, and so on. The drug class, which differentiated most clearly, almost in a binary fashion, high from low-income countries, was access to immunotherapeutic drugs, of course driven by cost. And other observations that were made were and again this doesn't surprise us, but the potential for catastrophic additional spending was much, much commoner in low-income countries, in which out-of-pocket expenses could bankrupt families, as simple as that. It caused me to think of a couple of things. One is, it's interesting how we always focus on drug expenditure. We do this within my own healthcare system, within my own hospital. It's always easy to, if you like, draw a circle around identified drug spend. Even though by and large, it only accounts for 10 to 15% of the total health budget. It's well circumscribed and therefore there's a strong focus on it. So that's one thing. The second thing is thinking about the drug chain of access from the pharma company through distributors, through middlemen, through pharmacists, through various markups before the drug gets to the clinical front line. This is something that all of us need to think about, which is of real interest. How can we make innovative medicines available to those in low-income countries if we cannot even make generic drugs available? This is one of the findings highlighted in this paper. Another thing, I know I come back to this time after time, is if we now have a relatively clear sense of what the 10 most important anti-cancer drugs are, would it be possible to construct a set of guidelines as to how to best use these? The majority of guidelines which are provided by the professional societies and so on focus on the latest evidence. No matter how expensive the drugs are, no matter how marginally effective, this is what creeps into the guidelines. And I would love to see a piece of work in which we just said these are the top 10 drugs which are used, and the best way to use them to treat breast cancer, lung cancer, colorectal cancer and so on would be to use these drugs as single agents or more commonly as combination regimes. That would give some support to our brothers and sisters in low-income countries who struggle and fight to use even these drugs. So something very interesting about it. I think we need to do a wider piece of work. I think that we need to engage further with the global oncology community to talk about access to cancer medicines. We need to do better. There need to be better models of purchasing, whether countries, low-income countries, can cooperate together to get better deals from pharma, from generic drug manufacturers. We need to improve and simplify the drug supply chain, taking out as fairly as we can the middlemen and the potential for markups and so on, to get that sorted out. We need to understand why the price of generic medicines can be so high and can still be financially crippling to many families, particularly in a low-income setting. So I think more work needs to be done, and perhaps to engage the wisdom of the crowd, to think about some lateral thinking and to go beyond our community of oncologists, of healthcare specialists, to bring in economists, people who are experts in supply chain, just a different set of eyes and intellect and vision to look at this problem. Because here we are again, discussing the same thing, running up against the same brick wall, and although we report these findings, although we understand what's going on, although they come in a way as no surprise whatsoever, we seem no further forward to finding solutions for it. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can find a way of inviting the wisdom of the crowd through a hackathon. Those of you who are reading this, watch this space please, because this is something that I think we need a wider band of thought to think about. Have a look at the paper, it's beautifully written. It is very, very interesting given the weaknesses I mentioned at the beginning and so on, but it's a noble attempt to give some insight into what drugs the wider global cancer community uses, what priority is given to these, and how even so we fail to deliver often the commonest and cheapest of these drugs in low-income settings. Have a look at it. Watch the space. I'm thinking about the hackathon. You're all invited. Start thinking your thoughts now. But as always, thanks for listening. Very, very welcome in any comments, ideas, hypotheses, potential solutions, no matter how wacky the idea might sound, contribute it. But for the time being, Medscapers, thanks always for listening. Please post comments. Help me, help us, help your brothers and sisters to see what we can do together to think through this, what seems like an eternal problem. Thanks for listening. For the time being, Medscapers, over and out. Thank you.